Jai Sudev, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Vihangam Yog Global Online Satsang. I myself am Abhinav, joining from Australia, and I'm super excited to take you all through a very important journey today. For those of you joining us for the first time, a warm welcome. For those of you who have returned once more, we thank you for your ongoing support. Today's topic is one which arguably we've all asked ourselves at some point in our life. The journey of personal identity is one which we have all embarked upon from the moment we stepped into this world. How we answer the question, who are you? Or as you look into the mirror after a long day and ask yourself, who am I? The answer to this question is one which evolves as we go through the journey of life. Indeed, if we look at the history of humanity, many deep thinkers, philosophers, and spiritual masters have provided us a way with different lens to answer this perennial question. Famously, a Chinese philosopher, Zhuangzi, provided us with a compelling way of thinking about this. He stated, "When I dream of being a butterfly and awaken, am I a butterfly dreaming to be a man? Or am I a man dreaming to be a butterfly?" Indeed, as we go through life, we each answer this question differently, and yet it's so important for us to define the boundaries of self. For without knowing who we are, it is difficult to know what can truly make us content and happy in life. What do the spiritual masters have to say about this? Is there a means by which we can dissect all definitions of self and arrive at a completely experiential and a scientific way of defining who am I? Well, today, equipped with our global panel, we'll be diving into this very topic and journey through the lens and ancient-most science of Vihangam Yoga. Today, I'd firstly like to extend a warm welcome to our panel to Rishi Ji from India, Lalmani Ji from the US, Jaswant Ji from India, Subhash Ji from Singapore. As always, if you have any questions or thoughts to share, we have two avenues available to you, one for listeners, Slido and WhatsApp. If you look at the screen now, you'll see the WhatsApp number coming onto your screen. And once this flows through, the Slido link, slido.com/VYGOS will come up. In each of these avenues, you can ask any questions you have, and we will pick them up in the last part of our session, the Q&A session. We now proceed towards the Svarved. The Svarved is an extremely divine composition, one which was composed by the master of Vihangam Yoga, Sadhguru Siddhartha Ji Maharaj. The unique thing about the Svarved is that it is a distillation of his own experience on the path of spirituality, where he himself had to face questions such as, who am I? As such, we find it extremely important to look at and really seek to understand and listen closely to what a person of his caliber, a person of his experience has to say about the topics which we are ourselves looking to better understand. So with great excitement, I'd now like to ask Rishi Ji from India to take us through the Svarved recitations for today, after which we will proceed toward our main speech for the day.
Jai Sadgurudev. I welcome all of you to the Vihangam Yoga Online Satsang. Now I will share with you few verses from Svarveda which relates to today's topic, who am I? कर विचार मैं कौन हूँ, ब्रह्म को जगधाधार, कैसे जुग उत्पन्न है, लीन कौन विधि पार, कौन सत्य कर्तव्य है, दुख सुख कैसे होए, बद्ध मुक्ति के भक्ति सो, ग्रहण करो सत सोए. This means that we need to think, deliberate that who am I? Who is supporting the world? How this universe has been created? What is our prime objective in this life? What is the reason of happiness and sadness? What is bondage and how can we liberate ourselves? We should only accept the truth. एक देखी अनुआत्मा अनुभव में यह आए, करता भोक्ता यही है, जन्म मरण दुख पाए. This means that the size of soul is very small and it can be realized only through experience. The action and fruits of action, pain of birth and death is all borne by the soul. आत्म जानन के लिए अन्य करन नहीं काज, आप को जानता सुमिरन पुरुष सकाज. To know about the soul, we do not need a physical medium. Soul realizes itself through its own knowledge and prays to the super soul through its realized self-consciousness. धर्म ही मन ही है, स्वर्ग नरक मन जान. बद्ध मुक्त ब्रह्म मन ही है, मन ही शत्रु जान. निज स्वरूप से भिन्न जो दौड़ जहां लग जाए, सो सब धोखा मन ही का, मन ही जगत उपजाए. Here we differentiate the soul from mind. Mind is different from soul. Uncontrolled mind is the great enemy of the soul. Hence, soul attains its consciousness by separating itself from mind through yoga. Mind is responsible for all type of religion, good and bad work, and realization of heaven and hell. तन मन सुरति अनेक हैं, एक मिले के ही भांति, मिले सदा फल एक जो, सर्व मिटे जग भ्रांति. Body and mind are connected to self-consciousness of soul. Once we meet Sadguru and understand and accept his knowledge, all confusions are disseminated. I hope you like the verses which are related to the current topic. Jai Sadgurudev.
Thank you very much, Rishi Ji. And, this Svadved, as Rishi Ji was just explaining, it is a transcription of Sadhguru Siddhartha Dev Ji Maharaj's journey from the soul to the universe and beyond. And for you wonderful listeners, there was quite a bit to unpack there. Liberation, truth, happiness and sadness, soul, birth and death, physical mediums, mind, consciousness. And I'm sure you're already thinking about a lot of these things. Perhaps you have questions in mind. So do remember, please, that we have two avenues available to you. The Slido URL, which is coming up, Slido link, which is coming up on the screen now, and the WhatsApp link, which will be coming up soon. We're ready to take any questions about anything which is being discussed today. So please do jump in there and ask any questions you have. Thank you again, Rishiji, for that wonderful recitation of the Svadved. We're now ready to proceed toward another exciting part of today, the main speech. So today we're actually joined by Lalmani Ji from the US, who will be taking us through his own reflections on this very topic of who am I? And, we heard just now in the Svadved that, with all of these concepts of happiness, sadness, what is deterring us, what is guiding us, a lot of these things are very closely tied to how well we can connect with our true self. It's difficult to say what makes you happy if you don't know who you are. And this is the reason why in spiritual philosophy, in Vihangam Yoga, the practice of Vihangam Yoga, the question of who am I is one which is of utmost importance. And I don't think you even need to be part of any philosophy to see the importance of why you need to understand yourself better. Arguably, as we go through life, each of us are trying to do this in our different capacities, in our different walks of life. So now, equipped with all these thoughts, let's go towards the reflections and the speech which Lalmani Ji has to present to us today. So I'll now hand over to Lalmani Ji, and then we'll continue our journey for today.
अखंड मंडलाकारं व्याप्तमयेन चराचरम् तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। ॐ विश्वानि देव सवितर्दुरितानि परासुव यद्भद्रं तन्नयासुव नहि देवो न मर्त्यो महस्तवः क्रतुं परः मरुदभिरग्नया गहि। Thank you, Abhinav ji. Hi everyone, this is Lalmani. As we know, today's topic is who am I? This is very important question all of us should ponder upon. Whenever we meet strangers or asked, who are you? We respond with our name, position, location, wealth, etc. The question is this really our true identity? Is this what defines me? Let me share a story and we'll go through that, the learning from the story also. A monk traveled all across the world and returned to India. The king of that place came to meet the monk and told, Swami, I've been asking a question continuously for 20 years. I have not got the answer yet. Can you answer me? The monk said, sure. Today you will not return unanswered. Go ahead. The king said, I want to meet God. And do not try to convince me about God. I want to meet directly. The monk said, want to meet now or later? The king said, excuse me, maybe you didn't understand my question. I'm talking about God the Father. Don't think that I'm talking about a man named God. You are asking me to meet now or later? The monk said, O king, there is no scope of misunderstanding. I do the business of uniting with God around the clock. Just got to see if you want to meet now or later. Give me a direct answer. Since you've been looking for the answer for last 20 years, now the time has come. So plan to meet now. The king dared and he said, okay, I want to meet now. The monk said, please write your name, address on this small paper so that I can send it to the God who you are. The king wrote his name, his palace, his introduction, his titles, and gave it to him. The monk said that, Sir, all these things I know are lie and untrue, which you wrote on the paper. The monk continued, O king, if you change your name, will you change? Will your consciousness, your power, your personality be different? The king said, No. Why would I change with a change of name? Name is name. I'm me. So the monk said, One thing has been decided, that the name is not your introduction, because you do not change by changing it. Today you are a king, tomorrow you will be a beggar of the village. Will you change? The king said, No, the kingdom will go away. I will be a beggar, but why will I change? I am who I am, whatever I am as a king. I'll be the same as a beggar. There will be no house, no state, no wealth, but me. I will be what I am. So the king said, So the other thing has also been decided now, that the state is not your introduction. Because even if the state is lost, you do not change. By the way, what is your age? He said, 40 years approx. The monk said, So after 50 years, will you become another? 20 years old, or when you were children, will it be a different person? The king said, No, age changes, body changes. But me, I was in my childhood. Who was inside me even today? The monk said, Then age is also not your introduction. Your body is not your introduction. Who are you? Then write it down, and then I will reach to God. Otherwise, I will also be a liar with you. None of this introduction is yours. King said, Oh, that's a great difficulty. I don't even know myself again. I don't know who am I. I know that I belong to them. The monk said, Then there was a lot of difficulties, because the person whom I could not even introduce, could not even tell who wanted to meet, then what would God even say whom one wants to meet? So go find it first, who you are, and I will tell you that on the day you know who you are, that day you will not come to find God, because in knowing oneself, it is also known who is divine. Know yourself first, experience, identify yourself, and God will be known. So with this little story, it is pretty much clear that the introduction that the king gave was not correct about himself. And same goes with us also. If we are trying to identify, we are trying to find our true identity, it is not our name, it is not our title, it is not our wealth. On the other hand, let's take a look at this with a different perspective also. Like, which stocks is going up, which one is going down, who is breaking up, who is getting married, which politician tweeted what, who is starting a new business, who is learning what, who is stressful at job. We know lot many things. We know how to eat, how to walk, how to talk, how to laugh, how to cry, how to jump. We know all these things, but what we don't know is who am I and what is my destiny. Do we really know who am I? Probably not. Many a time when you are very peaceful, alone, you will start wondering about our own existence and would think, who am I? And it is really, really very important to know who am I. If we know about ourselves, our real identity, we can take a better decision about ourselves. It is more like if we know the power, the capacity, and other details of a car, it is better to decide if the car will run that far or not. If a person is an engineer with no knowledge of medical science, taking decision to do a surgery of a patient is a wise decision or not. That can be pretty much decided well in advance. Hence, it is wise to know our true identity, our true potential. Who am I? With the knowledge of what a person can do and what not, a person can decide their limits. If I don't know who am I, then it would be just like a person walking in the woods in random direction aimlessly without knowing where he has to go, and eventually the person would end up going nowhere. Now, from the story, it is very, very clear that I'm not this body. I'm not the five sensory organs. I'm not five organs of actions. I'm not this heart. I'm not this lungs, not liver, not kidney. I'm not the pranas, not even the brain. I'm not Ingla, not Pingla, not Shushmana. Neither I'm Niranjan, Om, Soham, Shakti, and Dharam. I'm not this body. Rather, I live in this body. I live in this body like a bird living in a cage. Sadhguru Sadafal Devji Maharaj has written about this entity called the soul, the spirit, the conscious entity, Atma. एक देसी अनुआत्मा अनुभव में यह आए करता भोक्ता सोय है जन्म मरण दुख पाए. Atma, the soul, the spirit, is the doer as well as the fruit bearer. It is unipositional, so it stays at one place at a time. Now, if you want to experience about who am I, the soul, the spirit, there are two ways to experience it. There are certain properties that defines me. And there are three properties of the soul. Those are one of the ways you can identify in a physical way. Those three properties are desire, knowledge, and action. So if a human body has some desire, knowledge, and can act, then definitely that human body possess or has Atma in it, or the soul or the spirit in it. The moment that soul comes out from the body is called dead. It is almost exactly like in the story when monk asked, if I change the name, will you change? Will your identity change? And the king replied, no. It's exactly the same way when the soul comes out of the body. The difference between the moment before the soul comes out the body and a moment after is only the difference is of the soul. Everything else remains exactly same way. Just a moment ago and a moment later. So this is one of the physical way to identify whether a particular entity, soul, is present or not. There is another way also to identify yourself or identify or experience the soul. As in the couplet, it says that ekdeshi anuatma anubhav mein yah aaye, which means one can experience its own soul. It doesn't require any medium to experience that. And how can we experience that? The only way to experience yourself, which is also called in a way self-realization, is nothing but Brahma Vidya Vihangam Yoga meditation. Once you start the journey of Brahma Vidya Vihangam Yoga meditation, then eventually on the path, you experience yourself. It doesn't require eyes or your ears or nose or tongue or skin or any sense organs to experience that. So with this, looking at the time, I would conclude myself here and would like to thank everyone for listening to me. Back to Abhinav Ji.
Thank you so much, Lalmani Ji, for that fantastic deep dive into this perennial question of who am I? Lalmani Ji took us through a collection of concepts which really shed some light on the different parameters by which we currently define ourselves and the parameters which spirituality and Vihangam Yoga tells us we should define ourselves by. Age, body, location, name, these are mutable properties, which, although we ourselves may think we're mutable, it is difficult to say when we do not know what to identify ourselves by. Without knowing who you are, you cannot know what you're capable of. You cannot know what you're happy about or what makes you happy, what makes you sad. We need to know what the engine of this body is, which Lalmani Ji very beautifully explained to us is the soul, with the story of the monk and the king who was a seeker. So I want to thank Lalmani Ji for that wonderful, wonderful little reflection on and discourse on what we really are, who we really are. I'm sure you all have many questions coming up in mind. Please do remember, as I mentioned, we've got 2 avenues available. WhatsApp, the number which you can see just now on your screen, as well as slido.com/VIGOS. I can already see some very interesting questions coming through, and we're super keen to take you through how we think through those very questions day to day. Now we move toward our Q&A session, where we'll be joined by Subhashi from Singapore as well. Subhashi is a director at Aon, and has been in part of Vihangam Yoga for a very long time and has a wealth of experience and a wealth of thoughts to share on this very important question, I'm sure. So welcome to Subhashji, and thank you as well to all of you wonderful listeners who are sharing your thoughts on Slido at the moment. As I mentioned, we have slido.com/VIGOS, as well as the WhatsApp number, which is coming onto your screen just now. So we'll be going through these questions for the next 10 to 12 minutes, after which we'll proceed toward the latter parts and the ending parts of our session. So Subhashji, there's a couple of questions today regarding our topic. And Alok Sharma asks, what difference will it make if I get to know who I am? I think it's a great question. If you're already feeling great about life, if you're very happy, if you think you found your path, your destiny, what difference will it make if you really try to answer this question in a spiritual way? So I'd love to put this question to you, Subhashji, and understand what you have to say about this.
Thank you very much, Abhinavji. And thank you to Alokji as well, who has asked this question, that what is the difference to make it if he comes to know who am I? I think just right now we heard from Lalmani Ji, quite beautifully explained what is the meaning of I and how does it function. But as far as this question is concerned, I think we need to understand a few more things along with just this question. When we say I, what is the meaning of I? What entity we are talking about? Lalmani Ji mentioned, and in Bhajan also we heard, that we are not just body, we are not just sense organs, we are not just mind. There is a conscious element, there is a conscious entity inside this body which resides, in the absence of which there is no meaning of this body. In our normal terminologies, we are called dead. Our body doesn't function. So the importance here is not just to the body, but to that self-conscious entity residing in this body as well. It is an irony that we know most of us, in fact, almost all of us know ourselves just in the form of body or in the form of the mind. But we are not just mind and body. We are something else. The point here is, do we know that entity because of which this body exists? Probably not. Theoretically, probably yes. Most of us understand, most of us know through our reading, listening to others, or our self-juggling of mind. But in reality, do we have the experience of that conscious entity or not is most important thing. Now, what makes it different? This body has limitation. The mind also has limitation. All the human beings, everyone in this world is trying to find something in our daily continuous journey. What are we finding? We are finding the happiness. We are finding the peace. We are finding the bliss. But very interestingly, whatever we find, to whatever extent we find, it appears at what time that it is temporary. It is temporary. It doesn't last long. The peace, the bliss which we are talking about, whatever we receive, the base of the receptive nature is different. We are receiving all these things, we are experiencing all these things on the basis of our body and our mind only. What about the conscious entity, the soul, the I, the self? Is it really experiencing the way it has to experience? The happiness, the peace, the bliss? Are we experiencing exactly the way it has to experience, the way it has been meant to experience? Probably not. So when we come to know who I am, then what happens is our base shifts from body, from mind to the self-consciousness. Once we shift to our new base, the self-consciousness, the whole dynamics around us changes. Our experience gets changes. Our feeling is very different at that time point. The way right now we look the whole world would be different when we shift our base to the self. So the importance here to know about who am I is to progress further towards myself, towards ourselves, to know ourselves better. And the important thing is what that conscious entity is. Lalmani Ji mentioned that there are three specific characteristics of conscious entity is. What are those three characteristics? The effort, the knowledge, whatever knowledge we have, it also has a base. The important point here is whether these knowledges, whether our desire is a conscious desire, it comes from the conscious nature of self, or it is coming from the worldly thing. Once we shift ourselves from the body, from the mind to the soul, to the self, the knowledge, the experience, the desire all get changed. We focus ourselves at that time point from where we have come, where we have to go. Is this the right place to be or not? Even if we are, why do we exist here? What is the objective to be in this world, in this form of the body? There are specific objectives for this body and residing in this body also. So the important point here, what I want to make here is, once we know who I am, then there is a spiritual upliftment, enhancement in the self. Reaching out to the Supreme Self is not possible unless and until first we reach to ourself. First we know who am I. So the difference, what will happen after knowing who am I is to reach to that ultimate bliss, the Supreme. And that is not possible unless and until I shift my base from the body, from the mind to the soul. Back to you, Abhinavji.
Yeah, thank you, Subhashi. That's a fantastic deep dive into that question. And thank you, Alokji, as well. I hope that clarified some of your thoughts on that. I think one key thing which Subhashi mentioned is that it's all a matter of experience. And we've had shards of experience in our life. At some points in life, we will have small experiences of a deeper sense of bliss. And, you know, the experience of soul is not something that is completely new to us. It is something which is just, you feel like you're reaching home in a sense, as the spiritual masters tell us. So thank you for that, Subhashi. And one more question for today from Som Prakashji in Varanasi. He's asking us, would a person who is very rich in life today have attained success by controlling his mind? Is mind control or the need to know who I am, a prerequisite for being successful in life? So I think Som Prakashji, I think his main kind of query is, are these things, defining and prerequisites for being successful in life? So I'll ask you to dive into that for a few minutes, Subhashi, and then we'll go towards the closing of our session.
Thank you, Abhinavji, again, and thank you to Som Prakashji as well for asking this question. When we say there's a very rich person in the life today, probably here we are trying to relate the richness from probably the successful life in terms of what that person has attained or achieved in this life. And at the same time, I think he's mentioning about controlling the mind as well. When the mind is controlled and the life is very successful, here I want to make one more point, that there is one more entity with us, along with the soul and the mind, which plays a very vital role, and that is intellectuality, the buddhi, who takes the decision. When we control the mind, at the time when we are controlling the mind, who is actually making the decision that you have to do this or you don't have to do this? It's the intellectuality, it's the buddhi. When we are able to control the mind, what does this mean? This means that the flickerness of the mind has been stopped. The mind deviates from one object to another all the time. That's how the nature of the mind is, to moving from one object to another all the time. When we are able to control the mind, that means we are able to conserve the energy. We are able to conserve the energy of the self, the consciousness as well. And then from there onward, whichever side we want to utilize that energy, we can do that. So when a person is able to control the mind to whatever extent he can, then the first milestone which he receives in his daily life is the success in his life. When the mind is controlled, you can see in this world, whoever is successful, you can see and test it and check with them also. There are lots of interviews in this world taken about different successful people. Everywhere they say, the mind has to be controlled. You have to be focused. And then only one can become successful. Then when we are talking about being successful, we have to think which side we want to move also. Whether we want to move towards the successful, being successful in this worldly entity, or we want to progress on a spiritual side as well. It is very much clear. It is very much clear that a person who is progressing in the right direction on the spiritual path, he would become successful in his daily life as well. But reverse may not be true. We can see that one person is successful. Depends how we define the successful, but if we suppose we define successful in terms of money or position or being quite happy in the life with lots of different types of powers he has, but that doesn't mean that he's having peace as well. But if a person in the reverse way, if the person is having peace on the spiritual path, then he would become successful automatically in his other part of the life. So when we talk about being successful, then the entity called successful is defined on the basis of which side of our life we are talking about. When we talk about spirituality, the spiritual world, the spiritual journey is not defined on the basis of what exactly we have achieved in this worldly phase, being a high position person or quite wealthy person or lots of power the person has. It is not defined on that basis. It is defined on the basis of the peace and the self-realization as well. There are different milestones we have to progress on. We have to achieve that as well. When we see somebody, it may not be possible or it may not be true that the way the person is appearing in front of us, the person is same as what he is. We can see the person from quite afar and still can say, oh, that person is very successful. But it may be possible that in his spiritual journey, in his spiritual life, he is not a successful person. So when we talk about who am I to be successful in life, it is again coming to the experience. Who is experiencing this successful nature? A person can be very rich. He can achieve one particular milestone in terms of wealth, in terms of power, but still he may feel that I am not successful in the spiritual way. So the importance here is for the entity which experiences it, whether the mind is experiencing the success, whether the body is experiencing the success, or the soul itself is experiencing the success. when we control the mind itself, then I believe if the mind is controlled completely, that means the self-awareness, the self-realization has already awakened. In that case, the experience actually is coming to the soul itself. So, if I have to say on that, then the success, the characteristic, the achievement, the success is being experienced by the soul itself. So again, I repeat, when we say being successful, we have to understand which entity of us is experiencing that successful nature, whether it's the mind, it's the body, or it's the soul. If the mind is fully controlled, the experience goes to the soul completely. That's what I can say here. Abhinavji.
Yeah, thank you very much, Subhash, for joining us today. And thank you to Alok Ji and Som Prakash Ji for those fantastic questions. I hope those answers and those discussions have helped you all to think through these things. So today we dove into the question of who am I? And we've heard and tried to understand many different things about this concept. But most importantly, we've kind of arrived at a conclusion that the true identity of us, of who we are, is not just what we can see in the mirror. There's something more to life. There's something more to us. And if we can reach that place, then we can start being more deliberate and more controlled and focused about our lives. At different points in life, we have experiences of a deeper sense of happiness. We escape or we go beyond just the chemistry of certain chemicals being released in the brain. We feel something deeper. And arguably, it tells us something that there is something beyond just the chemistry of life, just the chemistry of living in the world. And the spiritual masters, the master of Vihangam Yoga, Sadhguru Siddhartha Maharaj, tells us that is true. We should trust that intuition and we should become still. And in becoming still, we should look under the turbulent waters, we should become still and rediscover the treasure, which is who we truly are. So with that, we thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing from you during the week, as well as reconvening at this time next week. Thank you, everyone, and Jai Gurudev.
सदा फल शांतिमय शांति शांति सुख शांति